Hi to those who are just logging on now. We're just going to give everyone just a couple minutes to join us, and then we'll go ahead and get started. We still have people logging on, so just maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, so hang with us. All right, well, I think we can go ahead and get things moving today. So welcome, and thank you all for tuning in today for the second of our Commission Factory webinar series. Today's webinar is on Achieving Scalable Deals Personalization and Affiliate Marketing, where we have partnered with Revlifter to discuss a look at the rise and importance of personalized deal content in real time. Today, we'll be chatting over balancing retailer objectives with specific consumer behavior patterns. This will help brands ensure that goals are achieved while also giving consumers what they ultimately want, which is the best deal in the market. Really quickly, we're just going to run through a couple housekeeping items. So please feel free to ask questions through the Q&A functionality towards the bottom of your screen, which will be answered at the end of the presentation. Any questions that we don't get a chance to respond to will be responded to after the webinar directly with those attendees. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available within about 24 hours. And to make sure that the sound and video are working, if you could just at the bottom of the Zoom webinar screen, there'll be a raise hand functionality. If you could please just click the raise hand if you can hear and see me, so we make sure that we don't have any technical issues today. Okay, great. So just real quick introductions. I'm Amanda, I'll be your host today. I head up our publisher development team here at Commission Factory, where we work really closely with affiliate partners across the APAC market. We're also thrilled to welcome our honored guest speaker, James Malley. James heads up business development in EMA and APAC at Revlifter and is an extremely talented digital marketer with over 13 years of experience. James has led international performance channels, both network and client side, on top of his technical publisher experience. So we're really, really lucky to have him with us today. So thank you for joining us, James.
You're welcome, thank you.
I'll pass things over to you to get started.
Okay, guys, so first of all, thank you to everybody that's joined today. I'm calling in from London, so it's quite early here, as you can see. So today I'm going to be talking about achieving scalable deals, personalization, and affiliate marketing. And I'm going to do that from an affiliate angle. But I also want to keep in mind that, of course, everything I'm talking about really is affluent across affiliate marketing in general, across e-commerce in general. So what we're going to talk about today, I just really want to first of all define what we believe personalization is against what actually I think the market probably thinks it is. Then I'm going to talk a bit about customer expectations. So what's the data value exchange? And we're living in a post-GDPR world now. And I want to talk a bit about what this new world order really looks like. And then also personalization in practice. How do we actually practically understand how advertisers are currently using personalization? And then also just some case studies that we've got just to talk about how we believe that personalization is developing and how we're, I guess, pushing the boundaries within that sector. Then I'm going to talk a bit about what a success formula looks like. We need to understand also how we prove incrementality. And then I'm going to talk a bit about where I believe the future of personalization is actually heading. Cool. Okay, so to begin with then, when we talk about personalization, Google says at least that the action of designing or producing something to meet someone's individual requirements. Now, when we look at personalization from that angle, it actually talks about it being an individualistic thing. But actually, we believe there are two parts to this equation. So what we say at Revlifter is personalization is the process of creating one-to-one experiences for customers, presenting consumers with unique deals which are specifically tailored to their needs and desires, all based on the retailer's goals. Now, what do I mean by that? What I'm saying is actually, we believe that personalization has to start with the advertiser, because we need to understand what your objectives are initially, because we can't really start to actually then present personalized offers to the consumer until we know what you're actually trying to achieve. And what I mean by that is understanding things like not giving discounts unless we know what the margin is on the product, not being detrimental to the brand equity, for example. And then understanding also how do we change consumer behavior to benefit you, the advertiser, as well as also what the consumer ultimately wants, which is a personalized deal. So we think about it very, very differently. We don't believe it's a one-way street. It has to be a two-way street. Also, the other thing I want you to think about as I'm talking through this presentation is that, do you know what, we have gone through GDPR and consumers are really understanding what their data is security. They want to protect it. They want to understand exactly how it's being used. However, we believe that there is a real shift in customer expectation. Consumers understand that there's a value exchange with their data. They're willing to use it as a commodity in exchange for personalized deals. I'll explain how that actually works in a moment. So to give you some ideas around when we talk about clear value exchange, if you look at brands like Clinique, for example, where they're asking very specific questions to their audiences around the types of skin tone you have, what type of makeup you're actually looking for, and actually ascertaining what type of foundation ultimately is right for you. And actually coming back with the ability to, once there's been a clear value exchange and the consumer's given up some of their personal preferences, they're able to then to retarget and remarket to those consumers. Now, not all advertisers are doing it, but I would say that's the benchmark. It's the bare minimum that we should start thinking about doing within the affiliate channel. And consumers are expecting to be asked those types of questions. But then on top of that as well, actually, a brand that I've recently discovered through this journey of understanding how personalization really works is Thread. Now, Thread actually asks a series of questions, at least 20 to 30 before you can even shop. Now, I don't know any brands really that are able to actually ascertain that much information before consumers really willing to give up and shop. But the experience for me was I looked at illustrative ideas of types of clothing that I'd like to buy. And actually at the end of it, you actually get allocated a personal shopper, a personal assistant who actually is a stylist for you. And actually, even though it's an automated email that gets thrown out, you're actually able to contact them directly. And actually also to add everything to the personalization, you can actually follow that stylist and actually understand what type of person they are. And also, with everything, there needs to be some kind of threshold of spend. So, for example, here, we're saying if you spend £50, you'll get a £15 gift card. And ultimately, what we're doing is we're also setting a threshold of an average order value for the type of customer that we're trying to actually capture as well. But however, I think the market has moved on significantly from that. But when we talk to our customers here at Revlifter, we actually asked retailers why they wanted personalization. Now, unsurprisingly, of course, most of them said, more average order values, increasing conversion rates, right? And that's what you would expect, especially from the affiliate channel being sort of towards the bottom of the funnel in the sense that it's a conversion channel. However, what we started to actually get from our advertisers when we delved a little bit deeper was actually they wanted brand loyalty. They want customers to come back and shop with them. They want to really understand, you know, who their customers are and actually have a rapport with them, actually have a dialogue. And I think the industry is really moving on because we have a significant amount of data, which if you go back 5 years ago, we really struggled to process. Especially when I was client side, one thing that I really struggled with were the different systems that we had in-house. And actually, we really struggled with the amount of data that we were capturing, what to do with that data. And actually, we're in a position now where we can actually just skim the top of it and really understand and ascertain what type of consumers we're actually bringing to our sites. So how do we actually go about aligning to the retailer's goals initially? So here at Revlifter, we believe that we really need to understand exactly what people are putting in their baskets and not just, you know, trying to stop them leaving our sites, which is what we've really been worried about for the last 10 years. And that's where technology has been developing. But actually, customers don't necessarily just want to leave the site and go somewhere else. They're just looking for a good deal. So what we do here is we understand what's in the basket data layer. And really, these retailer data signals allow us to actually then start to capture and market to our consumers in a very unique way. Because if we understand what our basket thresholds are and what people are putting in their actual baskets themselves, we can actually start to skim that data layer and pull it into a feeds engine. Most of our partners will actually scrape a page. We don't believe that that's the right way to go. And what we then to do is we need to execute on the offers using our if and and statements, but ultimately machine learning, which is a buzzword at the moment at Revlifter. We believe that actually machine learning is all about understanding the consumer behavior on site, but also executing on the types of deals that they're actually that ascertains to what's in their basket. So I'm going to talk a bit about some practical examples in the industry of where I believe there are a good solid industry benchmark, but it's the bare minimum that we should be doing. Okay, so I want to start really from the consumer point of view before we flip onto the advertiser point of view. So a really good example of understanding how we segment our customers is Hotels.com. So the Hotels.com rewards program allows customers to have different tiers or different levels based upon how many nights they stay. So for every 10 that you stay, you receive one hotel night. Now, what this allows Hotels.com to do is ultimately market to their customers, with very particular deals because they know what hotels they're staying in, which is a program that's now been copied throughout the travel industry. However, as a very bare minimum, though, I would say that what hasn't really developed is the ability to target them at a tiered level and actually start to push people into gold and platinum memberships. And we really struggle to manage that because it's very difficult to market to consumers within an industry and make them buy more if you can't understand if they're on a business trip or if they're on a personal leisure trip. So if we look at Booking.com, who are the masters of persuasive nudging, one thing that they do particularly well is understanding the occupancy rates of their hotels. Now, this really is pushing consumers to actually book because the hotel might fill up quickly. But actually, what travel brands really want to do is actually push people to hotels where there's low occupancy. What we would do at Revlifter in this instance is use our technology, for example, to actually push people to Hotel B from Hotel A, where there isn't enough people staying, for instance, in the same location, by pushing things like room upgrades, or maybe a free bottle of champagne, or a free meal, or maybe some money off, for example. And it's actually difficult to manage those occupancy rates unless you're actually managing your yield and actually using the data that's in your data layer. Also, use someone like Misguided, for example, who actually are masters of persuasive nudging from a social proofing point of view. Now, social proofing has been around for what, 7 or 8 years, I'd say. But actually, there's still a lot of brands that aren't doing this as a very minimum. And this is a really good way to create urgency for a lot of your shoppers that are on site. Now, these may seem like obvious things, but like I said, these are very much the benchmark of what we would expect as a consumer these days. But the challenge that we're really facing is that actually consumers are very savvy and they will shop around for the best deal. And often I get questions from advertisers saying, well, if you're trying to drive consumers back to our site for the best deal, they've learned to go to voucher code sites, for instance, to find them. Well, actually, that's because they've learned to do that. And it's up to us to make sure that we challenge those consumers and actually challenge their beliefs and where they can get the best deals from. Because ultimately, as the advertiser, it's our job to market to them in a direct capacity. So from an advertiser point of view, and the way that advertisers actually do this, if you go to Treatwell, which is a brand that actually houses lots of spa treatments and luxury sort of spa treatments, basically. So what they do is they actually try and drive people to their app for the best deal. And the way they do that is they encourage app downloads on the site or via their partners, which is actually something that a lot of brands do try and do, but not particularly well, in my opinion. And actually they do this because they only offer their best deals via their app. And I think, they train their consumer to understand that they're going to get deals via their app that way. Hotels.com, Expedia, and a lot of travel brands do very similar things. Also, Very, for example, one of the first brands to really utilize weather actually in-house. Now, they do it at a very medium capacity, but they're probably one of the better brands actually out there that are managing this. So Very being an online shop, they can actually drive live weather information based upon if it's raining, they'll push wet weather clothing. If it's sunny, then obviously they'll do the reverse. And I think this is really important because we always worry about first-party data, and rightly so we should. But actually, we need to react to the environment around us, and sometimes it's best to override deals based upon what's happening with the audience in their vicinity. And lastly, Expedia, so presenting dynamic deals on the margin. So one thing that we really worry about as brands is actually how do we balance margins. So again, within the travel space, flights have a very low yield, they have a low margin, hotels have a higher yield. So OTAs are always trying to push packages, for example. And similarly for retail brands, trying to make sure you match fast and slow moving products together to try and create urgency for the consumer. But here at Revlifter, we actually see things rather differently, actually. So all these things have set a benchmark, that's fine, but actually how smart is the data that we're using? Things like social proofing are just showing how many people are looking at a deal. And when we're talking to our customers, what we really care about is actually increasing the average order value and increasing conversion, but not just using a median average order value. What we really care about is understanding the tiers of customers that are coming to our site. For instance, with Coast, we used our Stretch to Save technology to actually tier customers who are spending above the £60 threshold, but some are spending 100, some are spending 150. And actually, it's about marketing to those consumers to stretch the basket in the correct manner to them, because you're not going to be able to get somebody to jump from £60 or $60 to 200. It's just not going to happen. So we need to make sure that we actually make sure that we market people with really pertinent deals to the product that's not only in the basket in real time, but also that has a good yield for the advertiser and actually pushes them over to the most logical threshold. Because when we use discount codes, what we often see in the affiliate channel is actually a decrease in average order value. But what we're saying at Revlifter is that actually, if you use these deals in the correct way and in a really personal manner, we can actually increase the average order value. Declutter and Music Magpie, another client of ours. So very similarly, they obviously wanted to have conversion and average order value increases, but actually we wanted to talk to the customers in a really contextual manner. And what do we mean by that? Well, actually, are they new? Are they returning? Are they a lapsed buyer? It's really important that we make sure that we hit the consumer with the right messaging at the right time. And not just that, but also executing on the right deal. And it's really prevalent that actually consumers that you manage to do that in the right moment don't necessarily leave the site. They actually stay on and they will actually click and buy from the advertiser. And I think it's understanding that we worry in affiliate marketing that consumers always go to cashback or voucher sites for the best deal. It's not necessarily the case. But also, just from an increased revenue point of view as well, understanding smart upsells. So the way that we worked with HP, we actually pushed on the basket deals in real time. So we would increase the conversion rate and average order value by pushing the relevant deals to consumers. So to give you an example, if somebody had a small ink cartridge in their basket, we would message the consumer to say, did you know actually there's a bigger ink cartridge here, it has 1,000 more prints. Would you like to replace the item in your basket, and give them a very small discount? And actually, we got a 90% engagement rate, because what our technology can do is pull and push things out of the basket. And you'll find a lot of technology partners who are starting to creep out the woodwork now, who are able to manage and manipulate what's happening on the basket to make it a fluid experience for the consumer. This really allowed us to actually treble the conversion rate for HP, and it has done for many other brands as well. I just want to talk a bit about success criteria before we move on. But I think it's really important that we understand exactly what your goals are as an advertiser. I've talked about that at the beginning. A lot of affiliates that we talk to obviously try to get as close as they can to the brand, but without understanding what's in the basket data layer and capturing first-party data, it's really quite difficult to do that. But actually, we shouldn't get stuck on first-party data only. We need to understand third-party data as well. And what do I mean by that? Things like AccuWeather, who we partner with, so APIing live weather information into any deals that you're serving, just to get stuck on that point really quickly. We actually won an award last year with Vision Direct in the Australian market, and what we were doing was actually serving consumers in real time with the most relevant sunglasses and eye protection, because we're hitting people in high UV areas, for example, and actually telling them they have the wrong sunglasses in their basket. And when you're able to help a customer in that way, it doesn't just become a deal experience, it becomes a more personalized experience, in the sense that you're actually helping them actually find what they really are looking for and actually in the market. And from that, you can start to then ascertain insights of actually your consumer behavior. I talked a bit about how we execute on deals initially using deals engines, and most advertisers will, most technology publishers will use static and dynamic deals, which means that they're using if and and statements, which means they're building out very set scenarios. But actually starting to turn on machine learning, actually understand specific customer behavior is really important. And really what we're trying to do is create an environment for customers where, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, they feel as though there's a personalized experience with your brand and actually re-engagement, because, you know, like I said before, we do live in this post-GDPR world and people do expect personalized deals. And to manage that, we need to really understand what's in their basket, what other customers are buying, and actually start thinking about consumers as consumers not just as a one-time thing. Actually, they're, you know, how do we re-engage them from an existing point of view? But that actually starts me thinking about actually how do we prove incrementality. So with incrementality, we think about control groups and test groups. So you're probably familiar with working with partners who will say to you, we'll have group A where they don't see any of the technology, and group B who do see personalized technology, let's say on site, or whether it be through a personalized voucher code page. And actually, what we really need to understand again is what the advertiser objectives are. And when we start to observe those current behaviors, we really start to understand how we can start testing and learning. But actually, testing and learning doesn't really require you know, A, B, C, D type tests. Actually, we should be able to test on a one-to-one basis, because if we're taking things from the basket data layer or data layers that are on the basket page, at least we can then start to actually market to people on a one-to-one basis, because ultimately you can't start grouping people demographically like we traditionally have, because people don't necessarily behave like a herd. So we believe that we've moved on from the incrementality idea of just creating control groups. So yeah, of course we do have control group A and control group B, because that gives us a really base level of information. Is the technology engaging with the consumer? But actually, we talk a bit about freezing the basket before and post interaction. So what did the basket physically look like before a consumer actually saw a piece of personalized technology? And what does it look like afterwards? And actually, are we seeing a different pattern across the consumer base? Also working with partners like Commission Factory to understand what the impact across the entire channel is. And actually, if we're lucky enough to be able to see cross-channel, so all your paid channels, then actually what's the impact across all of those channels? Also, only showing incremental offers. I go back to what I've said 1,000 times in this presentation, but it's really important that we actually only show incrementality when it suits you, the advertiser, and actually when it's good for you, good for your margin. And also rewarding customer behavior, ultimately only giving a deal to a customer when they behave in a certain way to release a deal. So to give an example, we work with brands like Puma and Coast. We'll be launching Nike soon as an example. And actually with those brands, we're talking about showing consumers progress as to how close they are to getting a deal. So you're almost educating the consumer to help them understand how they're going to release a code, and that actually, you know, searching on the web isn't always the best way to find a generic code. Actually finding it at home at the advertiser site is actually the best place for that. Cool. Okay. So just before I get into personalized deals, I just want to talk a little bit about how we help brands do that here at Revlifter. So I didn't want to get into a sales pitch in the beginning, but I think it's important you understand how we execute here within the business. So what we basically do is build native personalized deals pages. So and we drive consumers back once they've left the basket. And what you'll find is a lot of technology partners are now starting to help brands similar to the way that we work, but in different ways on site. So I want to talk a bit about how I think that is going to help impact the future of personalized deals moving forward. Okay, so what we're seeing now is a move towards personalized rewards, and actually managing reward and gift carding in a live environment for consumers. So dynamically changing the margins on the rewards that consumers actually receive. So managing that on the basket would be, for instance, you have a consumer who has a pair of trainers, and actually educating them that if they add trainer protection and white socks potentially, that actually you're going to potentially reward them with either a deal or even a dynamic gift card. Also, the fight back against Amazon and retail. So we all know that Amazon's risen through the ranks over a number of years, and consumers have learned to go there to find pretty much any product that they want. Actually, what we're finding is a shift in retail behavior, that they're trying to wean themselves off Amazon. I guess equivalents in potentially in most markets would be creating or finding at least deals pages on the advertiser sites. However, most of these pages are static. So where we try and help consumers at Revlifter is by creating these dynamic deals that we're driving people back to once they've left Google, once they've left to go to Google to come back on an SEO and PPC basis. We're also seeing a rise in voice searches as well. So I saw a stat somewhere that by 2022, 50% of searches will be via voice. We need to start thinking about that. That's massive. And actually, are we moving with the trend? You'll expect Black Friday and also Christmas periods this year. There'll be a lot of people using their Echoes or their Google to search for deals. Also, brand direct to customer. The conversations I'm having on a daily basis with brands is, how do we get customers direct to site? Brands I'm thinking of are Nike, Puma, even HP, for example, a lot of electronic companies trying to move away from relying on resellers. And actually, I remember 10 years ago taking co-op funded money and not being able to put the best deal out, even though Intel had paid for a HP campaign because a reseller had a sale on. And now we're moving beyond that world where we're worried about those relationships. Also, use of geolocation. I mean, we're pushing people into store. I mean, especially if you look across the globe, loads of high street retailers are closing their stores down, moving to online. Some are even going bust or into administration. So actually driving footfall in store, but also driving high street traffic to actually shop on their mobile. Also, more offline to online as well. So how do we manage that? How do you manage the flow of traffic? Making sure that we actually capture data that wasn't digitized before. A lot of brands now, their technical houses or their technical functionality that they have for storing data is vast. How do you manage that? Well, actually, we're able to skim on the top of the data and actually understand how we manage that because we have partners that can process that data. If you look at partners like Adobe, for example, or all the big media houses. And actually here at Revlifter, we're able to pull a lot of not just the basket page information, but also electronic points of sale as well from the advertiser. And that gives us a new dynamic on the way that we shop. And also, if you look at brands like, for example, The Iconic, within Sydney, for example, delivering goods within the hour and then be able to send it back so you can actually get ready for a party in the evening. I mean, there are very few brands that are able to facilitate that, but that's a huge leap forward. Open banking also. So thinking about, what is it you're buying with your Visa, actually using that information. I remember eight or 9 years ago having a meeting with partners like Visa who were trying to understand how we use that information. Well, we're in a world now where we can access that and actually personalize deals to the consumers in real time. And also at the beginning of my presentation, I talked about consumers will take back control. I still hear people saying, people are worried about the security. They're not willing to give up their data. We need to be really worried. Well, yes, of course they are. I certainly am. We all worry about that. But actually, they also understand in this post-GDPR world that actually their data is a commodity. And we should understand that they're expecting personalized deals. Also, single points of application. So that's basically when we talk about when we have to refresh a deal, we usually have to refresh the whole basket or the page. Well, actually here at Revlifter, for example, we can refresh offers on the fly on the page itself. And actually, when we drive people back to the native voucher code page that we build, we're able to actually refresh those offers based on what they've had in their basket previously. Similarly, on the basket, that's also true. Also, FMCG will catch up with retail. So Unilever, for example, spend more than Tesco here in the UK. And you'll see that with brands across the globe as well. And actually, there are brands that have untapped budget, which they're willing to move into affiliate marketing. Traditionally, affiliate marketing has always been one of those acquisition channels, or people think it's just driven by deals. But actually, if you think about it, affiliate marketing really is a payment metric more than a channel. And actually, we house, as an industry, all of the other paid methods of driving traffic. We just do it on a performance metric. And actually what we'll do is we'll start to acquire more of that FMCG budget, which you see from co-op funding or from other areas as well. And certainly what we're seeing also is a rise of ethical rewards. Consumers are very savvy. If you just look at the rise within the, I guess, the younger generation with the fear towards things like climate change, for example, ethical rewards is a natural fit for those types of consumers. And brands like Tom's, for example, who are gifting shoes to poorer parts of the world. And I think we'll see a real shift. So, okay, in summary, just a few points that I wanted to make really before we open for questions. One, I think the brands that too take on board these personalized techniques and actually understand that their consumers are expecting personalized deals, like the ASOSs, the Iconics, the Boohoo's. They're the ones that are going to succeed. The Iconics, for example, within Australia, they're the brands that are going to succeed, and they're the brands that are going to fight against the downfall of the high street, which we're seeing. Because at the moment, the high street isn't adapting. So number two, if the high street does not adapt and understand that it needs to start driving or using data to attract its customers and create a different shopping experience, then they're going to really struggle. And I really believe that brands that have their own goods, for example, are really going to start to really push to drive customers direct. And that we need to be very wary that brands like Nike and Adidas, for example, are going to be trying to drive more footfall, not only in store, but also online. And if you look at things like Nike Labs, for example, through how they personalize goods for their customers in a really unique way, we're starting to see that massive shift. So I just want to leave you with one final thought from Jeff Bezos. So if you think about it, this is over 20 years old, and actually it's really prevalent today. I have 45 million customers. I don't just want one store, I want 45 million. If we're going to think about how we're going to fight against the likes of Amazon, who are personalizing and driving forward the immediacy that customers are expecting through delivery within the hour, we need to start taking on board that customers expect personalized deals in real time. So I just want to thank everyone for listening to me today. I'm just going to hand back to Amanda for questions. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, James. We've definitely learned a lot so far. We've had a couple questions come in, so I'll just dive straight in.
Great.
The first question is, what verticals does the technology best for?
Good question. So, look, I mean, the natural thing that people would probably think is retail and fashion. And if I'm honest with you, as a business, we have about 45 clients live now and about 40 in the pipeline. I'd say probably about 60% are retail and fashion. But if I'm honest with you, actually, all retails work really well. So we've actually got clients in the telco space, so EE, mobiles.co.uk. We've just about to launch AT&T and Verizon in the US. And the verticals like that work very well. Travel will work really well, even finance. And actually, the way that we've made our technology work is we're applying what we would consider retail strategies to the other verticals. So to answer your question, all verticals work particularly well, but we're using retail strategies in the other verticals to make sure that we're applying the best types of deals in real time to consumers.
Yeah, perfect. That makes sense.
Okay.
We have another question. Is your technology fully compliant with GDPR and data protection laws?
Yeah, so actually, I'm glad you asked that. So actually, we don't take any personalized information. We do strip data from the basket data layer, but we don't store it. We can do if clients want us to. But if I'm completely honest with you, we'd rather not get into that world. But we have GDPR documentation, which I can send out to any advertisers that want to see it. But ultimately, we don't take the full data layer itself. So, for example, an IP address, we would take a portion of it, and then we wouldn't store it. It's just not a road we really want to go down, if I'm honest with you. So yeah, we're fully GDPR compliant.
Okay. Yep. One brand has said, we don't use discount codes. Can we still work with you?
Yeah, so one thing I didn't really talk about today until the end was dynamic gift carding. So what we can actually do and what we do for some customers is actually dynamically serve gift cards in real time. So an instance of that would be somebody's on the basket, they have, again, some trainers or whatever it might be. And what we do is we'll make a suggestion for them to maybe take a few more products. It could be white socks or whatever it might be, and we'll release a code for them. But depending what's in the basket, we can actually change the margin of the gift card that we give them. We partner with WeGift for that. So, and that also means that we can push things like iTunes gift cards or any other brand gift cards you want, and we fully facilitate that. And what we'd only ask for you to increase the CPA so we can actually fund it. So, and what that allows us to do also is open a second basket, right? So an instance would be we could put a time frame on it potentially so that we drive people back to the store within a month. So I would always go down the route of doing that. The other thing we can also do is pair products together, so cross-sell and upsell quite easily. A good example would be maybe in insurance where you have home and content, or maybe mobile and broadband, for example, or it could be clothing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we just have several more questions coming in.
All right.
Could you give us more examples of discounts that you're seeing that are working? So for example, a percentage off or a dollar value off. You mentioned gift carding already. So we have a couple of different types of brands asking this same question.
Yeah, that absolutely. So the types of deals that are working best, that's a question I get often actually. So the truth is, we see stretch and save being probably one of the best ways of actually driving deals. So what we would suggest for customers to do, for example, is if they have certain items in their basket, we'll know if you have it in your data layer what the margin is. If you don't, then we can set predefined rules. So we'll say once a customer gets to £50, we'll offer them a discount if they put additional items in the basket up to, sorry, $70 or $50, whatever it might be. So stretch and save works particularly well. Other deals that we see are working are on specific items. So an example would be accessories for electronics brands. So maybe you've got a laptop in your basket, and we want to also push things like a headset as well, or it could be a Jabra audio speaker or whatever it might be. And actually for HP specifically, we can actually do it at a category level as well. So if we know you're a gamer, we'll know that you want a particular type of chip, for example, in your computer. Or if you are a savvy high street customer shopping at Maya, for example, then we'll know based on the items you have in your basket, what other items to suggest. And we'll put spend thresholds with different discount layers dependent on either the amount in your basket, what is in your basket, what the margin of something is in your basket, even potentially what the weather is. So if it's raining, which I doubt it does very often in Australia, for example, then we could push wet weather clothing. And so it really does depend, but stretch and save always works the best.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds really efficient ways and smarter ways of really increasing that AOV and protecting margins and shifting some products as well. So amazing.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question.
Sure.
How long does it usually take to get things up and running? So rather, how easy is it to integrate your technology, and how quickly could a brand get Revlifter running on site?
Sure. So just to start with, because this wasn't really a sales pitch, of course. I wanted people to sort of get our views on personalization. Just to very quickly explain, we basically run native deals pages on advertiser sites. And we dynamically serve deals when people leave the basket, and we also do deals on the basket too, in a nutshell. So our technology is actually already integrated in the Commission Factory tag, which is awesome. So we're a tech publisher, right? But there's no integration if you have that tag on site. So that's great. So 2 weeks is usually the running time, 2 weeks to 4 weeks, but it really does depend on getting things signed off. So we work purely on a CPA, but we need to get the designs for the page done, which you have full control over. So if you can get back to us quickly on that, then it's quick. And then we just basically need to agree the deals that we're going to run. So I'd say 2 to 4 weeks max.
Perfect. Well, I think that pretty much concludes everything for today, unless you have any other final thoughts, James. But really from Commission Factory, everyone here, we just want to say huge thank you to you, James, and the entire team at Revlifter for sharing all of the insights with us, and also to all of the attendees for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the time, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We'll see everyone next time. Bye.
See ya.